Welcome, everyone out there, to the 52nd episode of Don't Pick The Scab podcast, the podcast that specifically helps men over 40 in their divorce recovery, their struggles by providing the best interviews with special guests with special superpowers. And we have a definitely superpower lady today that dive into the tips, tricks, methods, and or hacks for my men over 40 to achieve their new reality in a positive way. We have Cari Frame on the show today. She is a certified coach and writer with lifelong study of self-kindness. I preach self-care, so let's figure out what self-kindness is. The self-kindness transformational power that is her superpower. Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast, with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery, either before, during, or after a divorce. Check it out. So tell us a bit about yourself, Cari, and let's go from there. But let's start with self-kindness. How does a man going through the worst time of his life practice self-kindness?
Yeah, that's great. They're going through so much during a divorce. And I think probably one of the things where self-kindness brings its superpower to men in that situation is that it helps them not double down on being hard on themselves while they're going through something difficult. Because there's all the stuff coming at you in a divorce, right? There's all the circumstances, all the relationship stuff that is coming at you. And that's hard enough. But then when you have within your own mind, you have inner negativity, you're beaten down on yourself with all the things you should have done better, all the things you should have known when you didn't. And then just the negativity that isn't even based on facts. It's just this constant stream of negative thoughts that really weigh people down and that add to the stress and take away from the energy that you have to deal with life and divorce and change. And so self-kindness is a practice that basically helps that inner battle ease off, so that instead of working against yourself, you can actually work with yourself, bring constant support to yourself through your thoughts and the actions that follow.
I was doing my research, and man, that buzzword just drives me crazy. Mindfulness. Everybody talks about mindfulness. What the heck is mindfulness?
Especially in some kind of change like divorce, I would say mindfulness at its core is the ability to just be here in this moment. Because when you're going through change, part of how our brain is built to help us deal with change is that it will take us to the future and it'll try to guess what the future is going to hold, which we're unfortunately not powerful enough to do. We don't have that superpower of being able to, but our brain will try to do it. And unfortunately, when we're going through a really difficult change, our brain will actually put us into a future that is based on the worst case scenarios of what it could possibly be, which then adds stress to what we're experiencing in this moment. Whereas when you practice mindfulness, first thing you do is you notice what's happening. It's like, why is my brow so furrowed right now? Oh, it's because I'm imagining this future day when maybe I won't get to see my kids as often as I want to, or when I won't have any retirement savings because I don't know what's going to happen with this divorce proceedings or something, right? So noticing in this moment that those thoughts are affecting you, and then bringing yourself out of that imagined future into this moment and just saying, okay, that future was really freaking me out, making me stressed. I don't know that's going to happen. So instead of focusing on that, I'm just going to be here and I'm going to focus on what I know is true in this moment.
So stay in the now. Don't project yourself down the road and trying to imagine what's going to happen.
Yes, because we lose so much energy. And unfortunately, when we focus on imagining the future that we don't want, guess what we're actually doing? we're bringing ourselves closer to creating it.
Yeah. Speak it into existence.
Yes. Yes.
What about,
And think it into existence.
what about life of hiding negativity? That, and you talk about living a double life. How does that apply to someone going through a struggle?
Wow. Yeah. Living a double life, hiding the negativity. I think the negativity that, first off, we end up hiding from ourselves, which then leads to us hiding it to others, is how hard we are on ourselves. If we could actually hear the thoughts that we have about ourselves on a regular basis that is just running all the time, right? If we could actually hear those, bring them out of our head and imagine if somebody was actually speaking those words to us, you're a piece of crap. How could you make that mistake? You're so stupid, right? These are actually what our internal dialogue can be sounding like. And we're being affected by it constantly, but we're not hiding from it. We don't really know we have a choice because it's happening at a slightly subconscious level. So first there's that. And then when we do know that we feel like crap about ourselves, but we can't show that to the world because that would make us look like we were actually a failure, or that we're failing at life or failing at being a strong man or something like that. If we shared with the world how hard we are on ourselves, right? So we put on this brave face and we try to act like we have confidence when really we're fighting this inner battle against ourselves, right? And so that takes a toll. That takes a big toll because you can't, ultimately it's going to show, right? Like when I know I've worked with clients, men in this situation where they're going through divorce and they want to show up in a really careful, mindful way in their divorce proceedings, but because they're battling within themselves on all this inner negativity, sometimes what ends up happening is they end up sabotaging conversation moments or something with their ex because they've already told themselves that they're going to fail. That's the thoughts that are happening in their head. You've been bad at this. You're going to continue to be bad at this. And so then what happens in the heat of the moment, they end up being bad at it because that's the thought that's already been happening in their head.
Wow.
So yeah, it takes its toll.
What about men over 40 practicing self-compassion?
Yeah, self-compassion and self-kindness, they're brothers and sisters. Self-compassion is basically this, exactly what we're talking about, where you bring awareness to what's happening inside of yourself. And then you bring the wish to understand. So rather than, let's say that scenario I just mentioned where a guy is talking with his ex and says the wrong thing or says what he didn't mean to say or something, and after the fact, if he was going to continue to be hard on himself, he'd just bring judgment and berate himself on, oh, I made the same mistake again and whatever. And it just compounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side of that, self-compassion or self-kindness looks more like, okay, yep, I totally acknowledge I said the thing I didn't want to say. I was a version of myself that I didn't want to be. I acknowledge that. But let's look at what brought that to happen. What was happening inside of me that made that happen? Oh yeah, because I was being so hard on myself leading up to that conversation. And I told myself I wasn't gonna be the right version of myself in this conversation. Sure enough, that's what happened. So how can I do it different next time? And you bring understanding and the opportunity to grow from mistakes rather than judgment. That's how you're working on self-compassion or self-kindness, is if you're not in a place of, I have to fix this problem that is me, and more like, I want to understand because I believe that I can grow, I can evolve. I believe in my ability to be the best version of myself.
So it's almost like a self-realization.
It is. It is. And even if sometimes there's a lot of self-doubt. Okay. So sometimes a realization is, oh, I completely know this about myself and I feel totally sure that this is who I'm going to be and stuff. That's quite rare. right? What most of us are dealing with is something a little farther down the spectrum where it's, I know who I am, and I know that I've struggled, and I believe that I have the capacity to keep growing and evolving. So it's not so much that I believe I'm already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I believe in my capacity to keep evolving.
Okay.
And even that has so much more kindness and opportunity in it than, God, I'm such a, can I swear, by the way? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I
Yes.
was going to say, God, I'm such a fuck up. Like, I keep doing the same wrong thing. Am I ever going to learn? That's just us like beating ourselves down when we're already down. So self-kindness and self-compassion is a release from all of that judgment and that beating us down. And it brings more of like acknowledgement and ownership, but also the belief and the hope and the intention to work towards progress.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got a really interesting question.
Okay.
With your 5 years at the local suicide hotline, what kind of pearls did you bring or learn from that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Switching into that. Yeah. And the suicide hotline, a lot of people think every single caller is someone who is suicidal. And that's not the case. There's probably about 70% of calls are people who are in some kind of distress, some kind of mental, psychological distress. And then 20% or 25% are people who are having some kind of suicidal thought. So they're people who are all along the spectrum of mental distress. Yeah. So the nuggets, I think the first one is the biggest gift that people get when they call a hotline like that is someone who is unconditionally ready to listen. So what we have in our life, a lot of times, we have people that love us, we have people that care about us, but there's often a little bit of conditions to how they listen to us. Because let's say you're talking to a dear friend and maybe they've heard you talk about your divorce a lot and I can't really listen anymore. And so they'll give you like 5 minutes to vent or something. And then that's all they have for you, and that's fine and whatever. And when we're talking with people in our lives about what's hard for us, we're often protecting them a little bit from exactly how hard it is for us, right? So when someone works with a coach like myself or calls a distress line, what they get is someone who is there to 100% listen to exactly everything that is true for them in that moment. And that in itself is 80% of the benefit that the person gets, is just being able to be listened to without any condition. They can say anything about how hard it is, about how lost they feel, about how mad they are and they don't know what to do with all that anger, or like they get to say it all. And we, as professionals, we know how to protect ourselves so that they don't have to protect us, right? They don't
Yep.
have to minimize their reality. They get to share completely. And that in itself
Everything.
is, yeah, a
Wow.
huge thing.
Explain to me, are we going to shift gears again? Because I love doing that. We're going to connect to joy. What the heck is struggling to connect to joy?
Struggling to connect to joy. So, in a nutshell, I'd say that is a result of when people are armoring themselves against difficult emotions. So, if you start to put up barriers within yourself so that you don't feel hard emotions, right? If you're going through a divorce, for example, and you have a huge amount of grief about the loss of the marriage that you thought you would have for a long time, but you can't let yourself feel all that grief because it's going to be overwhelming. So you put up these inner barriers, right? What happens is when we wall ourselves off from the hard emotions, we also wall ourselves off from the good and the beautiful emotions. So people say that they start to feel numb. right? They can't really feel the moments of joy anymore. Like they can smile and they can laugh and whatever, but they know that it's, instead of going all the way in and flowing through you, it just goes into about here, you know? And so they're not really feeling the joy. So doing the work to open yourself up to the hard emotions and the things that make you feel really vulnerable also allows you to then be open to the true depth of the joyful moments and the moments of connection and togetherness and all the good things, because they go together. You close one door, you're closing the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Self-sabotaging, and you're sabotaging your goals and dreams. How can a man over 40 circumvent that or prevent that from happening? Because you're going through the worst thing in your world and everything's gone to shit.
Mm-hmm.
Your dreams and your goals are going to shit. How do you overcome that?
Mm-hmm. It's a big one. Self-sabotage is basically a result of what your inner landscape looks like and feels like. So if you've told yourself that you don't deserve this good future that your goals are based on, if at some level of your consciousness you've told yourself you don't deserve it, then your actions, even though you say you have this goal and you take some actions to reach towards that goal, that inner voice that's saying, yeah, but you don't really deserve something that good, then your actions will prove that out. So the perfect example is when someone, let's say they go through after divorce, they go through a bit of a wellness journey or something, and they get really fit, right? They work on themselves to get really fit. I know for a lot of men going through divorce, like that's one of the things, like, I'm going to fix this, right? However, if how they feel about themselves inside is still negative, they're not feeling good about themselves, they feel like they failed at their marriage or whatever, the outside will always match the inside. So what happens is somebody will work really hard at their fitness journey and everything, and then 6 months down the road, they're back where they started. And the reason, and that's a kind of self-sabotage. And the reason that happens is because how they view themselves inside is still saying that they don't deserve to feel good. And so even though they manage to change the outside, inevitably changes back to match the inside. So that's why you have to start. You have to do the inside work. You have to really bring awareness to how you talk to yourself. What kind of messages is your brain telling you about you? And then pull that out and start to balance it with what's really true. Because usually it's lying. It's lying to you. If your brain tells you that you're a total loser, is that factually true? Could you take that to court and have a whole stack of proof that
Right.
proves that you're a total loser? No, you can't.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What about co-parenting tips? That's one of my favorite. Men over 40 have a hard time letting go of control, of trying to control what happens at the spouse's house. And I tell these guys, you got to let that go. You can only control what you can control. That. And my co-parenting experience was horrible. We co-parented separate, basically. You can co-parent together, you can co-parent separate. And so we are on two different pages. My kids are 31, 30, and 28, and they survived. But it was a shit show. It was a shit show. And looking back, I would do things differently, but it was so contentious and horrible that it was tough. So what kind of tips can you give to my men over 40?
Yeah, so particularly around the idea of feeling a need to control or to know or to have some choice in what happens in the other house, there's something under that they're holding on to, and getting to know what that is. So whether it's grief, that they're grieving not being able to make decisions as a family anymore. And that's why they're holding on to a need for control in the other house. So they need to deal with the grief of the loss that there are two households now. Or maybe it's a feeling of guilt that maybe while they were all together, maybe they have some guilt around not showing up as a parent the way they wish they had. And now they've lost the chance
Mhm.
And so they're holding on to needing to control what's happening in the other house. Acknowledging the guilt, bringing some self-forgiveness to yourself for what you didn't know back then, and being able to move forward from a place of, I know better now, and so I will do better now, right?
Or they could just be control freaks.
No, it's almost, yeah, but a control freak,
Yeah.
that's the surface symptom of
The
something
inner
deeper.
side, inside.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, no one's ever talked about it like I'm gonna
Oh,
think about that one. Yeah.
okay, good. Yeah.
How about the inner critic? How do you tame the inner
Mm,
critic? Because we can beat ourselves up. We are the best at beating ourselves up because we
yes,
know ourselves. The
yes.
only person that can beat you up better is your mom, I think. At this point, that's a whole different story.
I hope not.
Oh no, your mom can. Trust me.
Okay.
Mentally, she can. Yeah, the inner critic. How do you handle that inner critic? What's the way to rein him
Yeah.
in?
So the only way is to start with awareness. So my favorite place to start is for someone just at any point in the day, just stop whatever you're doing and ask yourself, what is my brain trying to tell me about me right now? Yeah, like even if you do it right now, I don't know, you might be too much in this moment, but there's always something. There's a message that our brain is telling us about us right now. And sometimes it's neutral, sometimes it's positive,
Mhm.
but 75% of the time, and this has been studied, it's negative. And part of that is a survival mechanism. So it's not if you have lots of inner negativity, you're a freak or something. No, you're just human. But if you can just pause for a second and say, I feel crappy all of a sudden. Huh. What is my brain trying to tell me about me right now? And just see what comes up. And it's, there's something about, like I had one the other day. I was like, why do I feel so heavy? And then I realized, I forgot to put my daughter's clothes in the dryer in the morning. And so she wasn't able to wear what she wanted to wear. And my brain
Mhm.
at some subconscious level is trying to tell me I'm a bad, thoughtless parent because I made this mistake. And it was starting to affect how I felt. And so I was like, what is my brain trying to tell me? Oh my God, that because I forgot to do this one little chore, that somehow I'm a terrible parent? Whoa, that's right. So, first step is to pause everything and just see if you can answer that question. What is my brain trying to tell me about me? And then once you pull it out and you can say, oh my God, that's what it's telling me, ask yourself, is that factually true? Factually, hold up in court, factually. And when it's negative and it's about you, most of the time it will not be factually true. It'll be opinion, it'll be conjecture, it'll be just like baseless negativity. So once you realize, okay, it's not true. I'm not a terrible mother just because I forgot to put clothes in the dryer. Okay, that's a fact. So what is something that's just a little more true? Just a little more true.
Hmm.
And if you can find something, like in my case, and I would say, first of all, I'm human, and so I forget things. But every moment of the day that I can, I bring love and care to my kids. That's true. And I have facts. Like, I got facts. So
Wh-
all of a sudden, I don't feel so bad anymore, right? Because I
Mhm.
found something that's true and actually also supportive.
Wow, you're in my head, Cari, because my next question is the power of the pause. Why is
Mm,
I can see where it'll like break you from that to say, hey, wait a minute, let me check this out.
yeah.
But why is the pause so powerful?
Because it helps us not be on a unsupportive autopilot. So we all have negative mental habits, right? Like the habit of being hard on ourselves. Man, some of
Mhm.
us have been working hard at practicing that for decades, right? And we're being affected by those habits all the time. So when you can pause, let's say I had a client actually last week who knew he had a really hard call to make to his ex-wife. And he was feeling reactionary, like he was frustrated about something and he wanted to just call her up and talk about it. But he's, you know what? I knew that this feeling in here was going to make me show up in a way that that I didn't want to show up, or that I knew it was an old pattern. I could feel
Mm-hmm.
the old pattern happening. So instead of picking up the phone, I just sat back and I just allowed the frustration to be there and allowed myself to be in this moment instead of some future or that past fight or wherever, and just say, okay, I'm frustrated. Who do I want to be with this in this moment? Who do I choose to be? And that to me is the power of the pause, is when you have a moment where you're not reacting. You're giving yourself an opportunity to very consciously choose who to be. Yeah, which allows you to choose from a much deeper, more grounded place, which is usually almost always better. Right? Yeah.
And why is fear no match for purpose?
Oh, that's a neat question. Why is fear no match for purpose? Fear needs us to be in the dark, is the first thought I have. Fear grows in the dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have purpose, you have something that you know. You have something solid that you know it, you feel it, it's a part of you, and you don't let go of it. If you really own your purpose, you don't let go of it just because you have a fear. So it's something that is stronger than those niggly things that grow in the dark, right? Fear needs us to be uncertain, and purpose brings us so much certainty. Yeah.
Almost
What's
like
your
it brings
answer
us,
to that? I would love to know, because it's such a great question.
it's almost like purpose brings us into the light where
Mm-hmm.
fear's in the dark.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. Cari, this has been awesome. My men over 40 have about a 30-minute attention span.
Probably me too. It's all good. Yeah.
But I appreciate. Oh, let's hear about your connections and where can they find you, website, Instagram, all that good stuff. Plus, I have that at the
Absolutely.
bottom of the show notes. But go ahead and talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my website is cariframe.com. On social media platforms, you can find me as Self-Kindness Coach. You can absolutely reach out to me. I love doing one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and workshops. I do custom workshops for different groups. So if anyone wants me to come and show up on Zoom and have a really engaging couple hours together, that's one of my favorite things to do. And ultimately, whatever you can do to bring those moments of care and compassion to yourself when you're going through something really challenging, it will never be the wrong thing to do. There's no downside.
Thank you very much, Cari. This has been interesting. I'm going to have fun time editing this. I'm not going to take much out. Trust me.
Okay.
All of it was good.
Okay.
Like good. But hold on the line and we'll continue. Let me go ahead and close out here. But thank you very much for your time and all that good stuff. And everybody out there, have a good night. All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
David.